In the April of 2017, players got their first glimpse at what War Thunder might look like with modern tanks, and we loved it. We got the T90A and the Leopard 2A5, supported by Apaches and Mi-35s, and we were hungry for more. Later that year, in September, we received our first composite armoured tank, the T64A. We also saw a new YouTube channel that would go on to take the world by storm, the Scottish Koala. Anyway, we saw the addition of the Leopard 2K prototype, or Kyler, in February of 2018, along with the M1 Abrams, Challenger 1 and T64 BV. We saw the production series Leopard 2A4 in June that year, and now, in March of 2019, we are finally receiving that original April Fool's testbed tank that started it all. Lads and ladies, wereaboos and wereabooettes, I give you the one and only Leopard 2A5. Oh my god, we're back. After 2 full years, or almost, we're finally getting to revisit the beast from one of the best, most extensive, and most enjoyed April Fool's events or April Fool's tests that I've ever seen from a game. Good afternoon, you wee bastards, and welcome back to War Thunder with Koala. And yes, today we are covering one of my favourite fighting vehicles ever that's being added to War Thunder in the coming patch, which should be coming in the next few hours as of my uploading this video. It might even be out already. The Leopard 2A5. 2 years. That's all it took us, and this tank went from being a joke, or at least being a test subject, nothing more, for modern tanks in War Thunder, and now we're seeing her come into the game for real. Permanently. This isn't a joke, Gaijin's not pulling your leg. The 2A5 is really here, boys. Oh my god. I'm going to take a moment to get my nerdgasms out now, and then I can focus on the video properly without having to stop every 10 seconds to freak out. Oh my god! Just... oh, so sleek and sexy. Look at that arrowhead. Oh, it's so beautiful. Just a phenomenal tank design. Well done, Germany. Shout out to the Bundeswehr. Oh, God. Everyone else good too? Yes? Bro. So lads, of course, we've already known about this addition to the game ever since the dev server. It was there on the first one, but was removed due to being so bugged. It was there on the second one fully, and at least it was rendered properly, but its armor was still all over the place, way higher than it should have been. Today, we're going to talk about the devlog itself now that Gaijin's released that. We're going to talk about the history and real-life capabilities of the tank in relation to previous Leopards, and kind of clarify some of the most confusing points about the armor protection of this thing. We might get a little sciencey. I hope I can still allow you guys to all understand it pretty easily, but then I need to go over some of the things I don't like, some of the issues we might face, seeing the Leopard 2A5s being added right now, because while I don't think it's going to be too imbalanced, it will be imbalanced, but hopefully not too much, and we'll go over why later on. I do not think that we are ready for this. Nope. Lads, if you saw my video series detailing future tank tech trees for War Thunder, the Leopard 2A5 would be balanced up at the same tier as the M1A2 Abrams and T90M. I will leave a link on screen and in the description if you want to go check that series out. It is well worth the watch. I spent a ton of time researching, going into a ton of detail about the tanks for every nation that could fill battle ratings all the way up to 11.7. Before we get started for real, I just want to say how awesome it is to see, comparing back to April Fool's 2017, just how far this game has come. Seeing the graphics changes, remembering the game back then. I can remember making one of my early videos on when the 7.7 black hole meta first started, and just look at the visual model from this April Fool's Mi-35 compared to the Mi-35M we have in game now. The old one looks so cartoony. Just fantastic to see, and I want to take the time to not suck Gaijin's dick, but praise them for the work that I think we, as players who can get a wee bit salty sometimes, often forget to notice. Just the progress that this game has made is incredible. It's still good old War Thunder, it's got its ridiculousness, it's got its memes. Just yesterday I bounced my 120mm APFSDS off the front of a Begleitpanzer. Panzer. Yeah, this game is far from perfect, but let's all just admit that sometimes Gaijin does good things, and those good things have come together to make a pretty amazing game for us to play. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about, so let's just dive right in. The Leopard 2A5 began development in 1988 as a modernization to improve the existing Leopard 2A4. The original designation was Leopard 2 Improved, or Leopard 2A4 Improved. This tank was sent to Sweden for the Swedish tank trials in 1991, designated as the TVM1, and would eventually go on to become the Leopard 2A5 for Germany, which we see today, and won the competition between the M1A2 Abrams, Leclerc, Challenger 2, and this tank, along with several others, to become the Swedish Army's Stridsvagn 122. I believe the T-80U was also part of those tests, but I think that tank was solely there as a target to test armour penetration, rather than as a contender with these tanks that wouldn't go on to be introduced until the 90s. The M1A2 obviously went on to enter service in 1992, the Leclerc in 1993, the Leopard 2A5 in 1995, and the Challenger 2 in 1998. I find it very funny how German players were screaming at the Challenger 2's introduction, saying how, oh well, now we need the Leopard 2A5 because it was in service 3 years before the Challenger 2 was, and it wouldn't it be fair for Britain to get a 1990s tank and not Germany? Germany suffers. And yet those same people can't stand the thought of the M1A2s being added, even though that tank was in service a full 3 years before the 2A5, and 6 years before the Challenger 2. Because in that instance, time frame doesn't matter, does it? This isn't a simulator, and that wouldn't be balanced, yada yada yada. Yeah, you Werribus can fanboy all you like, go right ahead, no one's stopping you, we all like to nerdgasm, especially me, but you gotta stop with the double standards, guys. Funny thing is, Germany has technically had a 1990s tank for months in the current Leopard 2A4, but we'll get to that in a bit. The Leopard 2A5 featured many changes over the previous Leopard 2A4, most notably that beautiful arrowhead-shaped wedge on the turret, which raised the protection levels of the turret to an absolutely insane 850mm kinetic energy munitions, and oh my god, 1750mm chemical protection. Have fun, helicopter pilots, you ain't getting through this one. That's significantly more armor effectiveness in both chemical and kinetic to the Challenger 2, M1A2, and even the Leclerc, which features a pretty ridiculous 700mm kinetic energy protection on the turret, although only in front of the gunner and only in certain configurations. The original Leopard 2 was developed along the same timeline as the original M1 Abrams, which we see in game, and testing between the modified Leopard 2AV and XM1 prototype for the Abrams meant that the two shared technologies, and many lessons were learned by both German and US authorities, which went on to shape their future main battle tanks. The Leopard 2A0 through 2A4 all used what was known as B technology armor, which offered protection levels almost perfectly represented in game. All that's missing from the 2A4 is the trunnion, which was a big lump of steel behind the gun mantlet and offered a good 50 to 150mm of additional armor that still isn't modelled, at least to my knowledge, although feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. The original Leopard 2A4 produced from 1985 featured this same armor. The only changes it made over previous iterations of the Leopard 2 were to things like optics, thermal and night vision, extremely important upgrades in real life, don't get me wrong, but of very little concern to us in War Thunder. By this point, however, B-Tech armor was becoming outdated. The M1A1 heavy armor variant with depleted uranium mesh would soon enter mass production, and what the Germans did was develop a new, more effective composite armor array for the existing tank, which was called C-Tech. C-Technology armor increased the effectiveness of the Leopard 2A4 to 550mm on the turret, not quite as much as the M1A1 Heavy, but an improvement of over 100mm more than the existing B-Tech Leopard 2A4. C-Tech also gives a kinetic protection of 425mm to the upper hull, and a chemical protection of around 910mm on the turret and 750mm on the hull. Leopard 2A4s with C-Technology armor began rolling off the production line in 1987, however some B-Tech Leopard 2s would continue in service with the German army until well into the 90s, and our in-game Leopard 2A4, even though it has B-Tech armor, is actually one from 1994, which you can tell by the collimator on the end of the barrel, which is tied into the muzzle reference system. Basically a mirror reflector which allows the ballistic computer systems on board the tank to calculate the warping of the gun barrel due to overheating, and correct for this when aiming and firing. By the way lads, if you want to know what A-Tech is, well, officially that's not really anything, but supposedly that designation was given to the spaced armor used by the Leopard 2AV when it was sent to America in the mid-1970s. D-Tech, on the other hand, does not refer to a base armor type at all, but merely to small add-on wedges that attach to the side of the hull and some partial add-ons to the front hull as well. These offer very little difference and attach onto the C-Tech base armor. The Leopard 2A5 continues with the use of C-Tech armor, and so the same protection values apply, but the Leopard 2A5 also adds the arrowhead wedge onto the front, which makes it effectively impenetrable to any shell currently known. Germany really designed themselves a bloody good tank back in the 90s. The arrowhead itself is not actually made of composite armor as you might think, but is a simple spaced armor triangle. Keep in mind that it is around 10cm thick of pure steel, with some vertical bracings inside, and only weighs about 500 kilograms, meaning that it should have zero noticeable effect on the mobility and speed of the Leopard 2A5 over the previous Leopard 2A4. The wedge might be spaced, I'll try and put a picture on screen, but this is actually better in this case than if it were filled with composite materials. panels. This is something I've explained in detail on multiple occasions, videos I will link below, but to give you the quick version, the space inside the arrowhead is great enough that any rod that penetrates through it is subject to forces that cause it to wobble enough in the air inside the arrowhead that when it comes into contact with the base turret itself, which is once again the identical turret from the Leopard 2A4, the rod hits the turret at a very bad angle and shatters on impact, rather than boring into the composite armour. If the arrowhead itself were filled with composite, then it would hold the rod on course, although considering how far forward the arrowhead protrudes from the boxy base turret, it's likely that it would still offer protection levels in the neighbourhood of 750 to 800mm, although it would weigh multiple tons more, making the tank much slower. Basically, 850mm is the given equivalent for the spaced armour arrowhead, but in practice, the tank's turret is impenetrable, unless the length of the rod being fired is greater than the space between the arrowhead and the base turret, effectively meaning that the spaced armour counts for nothing. I don't know exactly how wide the arrowhead is at its widest point, but there aren't really any shells used that we know of that are long enough to penetrate through it without toppling and shattering on the 2A4 turret underneath. Actually, the Leopard 2A5's underlying turret isn't quite the same as the C-Tech Leopard 2A4's. It does have the C-Tech array, but the mantlet was redesigned to accommodate the add-on wedge, and the gunner's sight was moved up above the turret, completely clear, just like the Abrams gun sight is, which means there goes both of those weak spots from the Leopard 2A4. Get used to turning around and going the other way when you see this tank in battle, especially if it's hull down. Now, in-game, the Leopard 2A5's arrowhead turret is actually capable of being blown off, which is something I find incredibly odd. I'm not certain, but I have never seen any sources documenting a Leopard 2A5's arrowhead piece being destroyed upon taking a shot. It might be possible, I don't think it's ever actually happened, but that definitely doesn't mean it wouldn't. But I feel like it wouldn't happen when hit by an APFS DS shell. Maybe a Heat FS round or ATGM would detach it from its mountings given the explosive force, or a Russian 125mm high explosive round in the right place. But either way, I feel like in game, I would prefer it not to be modelled that way. It should remain on at all times. Now you might think that that increases the capability of the tank, and technically it does, but the thing is, even once blown off, you still cannot penetrate the turret with anything currently in game, besides maybe a Hellfire missile from a Viper. Gaijin's wording on the devlog makes it quite confusing, but from what they say, it sounds like they're saying that even once the arrowhead is gone, the turret achieves around 600mm kinetic energy effective armour. This is slightly more than it should be, and on the dev server, the armour of the hull was also way overperforming, so do not trust that. Another thing is that on the dev server, its blowout panels were not functional, which they should be by live release, and it had an ammunition bug where it would treat the hull ammo rack as the first order rack instead of the turret bustle with the blowout panels, but once again, I'm expecting that to be fixed. Basically, think of the tank as being impenetrable on the turret frontally. There are only a couple of tiny weak spots, one being the extremely small turret ring. Practically speaking, if you're not engaging this thing from the side or the back, then you're a goner. Now, the reason I put this tank so high in battle rating when I did my Modern Tanks and War Thunder series is because of this impenetrable turret and the Leopard 2A5's DM53 shell which it had on the April Fool's event, which could easily penetrate through the relict ERA of the T90M and the hull itself, even out to a good 1.5 kilometers away. Well, in-game, the Leopard 2A5 will not have access to DM53 right now, it's a bloody good job. Its top shell will be the DM33 shell currently fired by the Type 90, which means that the M1A1 Abrams will still have the best shell in game, the M829. This is because DM33 is currently quite inaccurate, but either way, this tank added right now with its main counters being the T80U and M1A1 is going to be like the T2 of the ground. The simple fact is that it is not on a level playing field with the other tanks of its tier. What on earth is a pre-series Ariete or Challenger 2 going to do against this thing? God forbid you have to fight it in your T64A or even the M1, and how the hell Gaijin expects a Challenger 1 to perform against this thing? I seriously question their decision to add the Leopard 2A5 this patch. Now, don't get me wrong, I am incredibly excited to see it in game. It is one of my favourite tanks of all time, but I am scared about what this will do to the game. First thing I will say, you can kill it. It is not invincible, and anyone who's driving it out as if they are invincible is going to find themselves getting terrible results and wondering what the fuss is about. But that does not make it balanced. The Object 120 Turan can be killed by a Panzer III from the front, but that doesn't make it a balanced 3.0 or even 6.0. It's not even balanced at 7.7. The simple fact is that this tank is substantially better than the M1A1, Challenger 2 or T80U. Without DM53, it's going to still easily outperform everything we have in game currently. It might be capable of being killed, but it will be the hardest thing to fight by more than a small margin. This is not what balance is, and the annoying thing is, there was the C-Tech Leopard 2A4 right there for Gaijin to implement, which would easily have performed on par with the T80U, and likely a tad above the M1A1 even still. Although once again, DM33 should be fixed, raised back up to 530mm, and I think in this case that is the case, the M1A1 should also have access to M829A1 as the spaded shell. What Gaijin's done is model DM33 with incorrect density when plugging it through the Lands-Automat equation. We know that the density the Swedes recorded was accurate because of their testing it on the T80U, and what's more, Gaijin, after saying that the Swedish tank trials of 1991 were not a reliable enough source for them to use to model DM33 with correct density, only days later used those exact same trials to model the armour effectiveness of the T80U. And not only that, DM33 was the shell that was bloody fired at the T80U, wasn't it? The Leopard 2A5 will probably have to be gimped significantly if Gaijin wants it to fit in without completely breaking the game, or else it will utterly stop and completely ruin top tier for at least a patch until things like the M1A1HA and T90A are added in to put a stop to it. It better be higher than 10.3 because, once again, what is a Challenger 1 meant to do? You cannot penetrate it frontally anywhere. Look, I've covered all this in the Modern Tanks video, so I'm not going to say it all again, but one thing I will say is, what is achieved by this? You still can't add the Leopard 2A6, that thing would not be fair, penetrating the M1A2 Abrams and T90M, the modern ones from 2017, at any angle all the way out to 4 kilometers, with its L55 caliber gun basically just an elongated L44 and its own DM53 shell. Either that, or Gaijin would have to add the Leopard 2A6 with only DM33, which would be completely ridiculous. It's weird enough that DM33 is the top shell for the 2A5, and DM43 is a shell that Germany never used. Gaijin could add the Leopard 2A6 in alongside the M1A2 and T90M with the DM43 shell, I suppose, but it would be quite weird, as the Leopard 2A6 began its life with DM53, and these days fires shells like DM63 and even DM73, which have just ridiculous levels of penetration, up in the 1000mm range. Basically, just because Gaijin's added the Leopard 2A5, don't get your hopes up that that means the Leopard 2A6 will come eventually, because it really just can't. I see no reason why the Leopard 2A5 is being added right now besides hype, and it is going to be the best tank around, at least for the duration of this patch. The M1A1HA might perform on the Leopard 2A5 provided it only gets access to DM33, and if you fix DM33 and give the M1A1 and M1A1HA access to the improved M829A1 shell, basically, I'm just repeating my Modern Tanks video right now, so once again, go check that out. I've covered basically everything there. The tank looks incredible. It's obviously the big boy of the patch, and Gaijin's done some incredible work on it. It is the main event, the star attraction this patch, so expect to see it on the launcher images when the patch does drop. All I can say is, good fucking luck facing the Leopard 2A5 in anything else right now, because even the other tier 7s are not on par with this thing, and that is just not good enough. Gaijin, balance this damn thing. That's what this game is about. If you want to say that it has to be added because of time frame, then go ahead and add the M1A2 Abrams T90 Vladimir alongside it too, along with the Leclerc for France, which, to be perfectly honest, they should have this patch anyway. I am filled with both excitement and dread, and doubtless we will be playing this tank out for a video, but I think I've laid out my problems with its introduction right now. I think if next patch the C-Tech Leopard 2A4 is introduced and this tank is up tiered along with the M1A1HA and T90A's introduction at the same tier as it, that'll be good, but that means that Germany is the nation not receiving anything new extending the battle ratings next patch. I think Gaijin is honestly just pandering to the wereabouts that will always complain about not receiving enough, and in doing so have ended up with a situation by which the game is now fundamentally imbalanced. So good luck at top tier, you're gonna need it. I do however hope that you do enjoy the patch. I'm gonna be making a ton of videos on it, but for now, that's gonna be it for this one. I hope you lads have enjoyed, and that you leave a like if you have, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that bell icon, join the 360 squad, and come follow me at all the social media, links are down in the description, along with a link to my Patreon if you wish to support the channel further. I will be live streaming considering the patch is likely to drop between now and tomorrow morning, so I'll be live streaming in a few hours after you see this video. Until then, always remember lads, keep your bagpipes close at hand, keep your kilt firmly on, and I shall see you next video. I say a wee thank you to these lads for supporting me on Patreon. The Bretlander, Seagull Nuts, DA261, Latvia Wolf, Gisli Gararson, and Dark Recon. You lads are bra. If you wish to join them, come check out the link in the description below.